Hello there, kia ora. Do you know what we call a bad day in PR for the Prime Minister? Well, this week we're calling it Sunday because he had a shocker of a day on Sunday. See, it started off with a really weird State of the Union speech that nobody asked for. It wasn't necessary for any sort of like legal or ceremonial requirement like the opening of Parliament for the year. It basically felt like an election campaign without any election, almost like he's doing it because David Seymour did it and he didn't want to be left out. But then after that, he was asked by press about his attendance for the big gay out in the afternoon, where he was very much looking forward to going to the event. And then he spouted some weird random stuff about how the issues that the rainbow community had raised with him were exactly the same as the issues that he's been campaigning on, even though the election was over months ago. It was weird and kind of surreal. And then when he went to the event, well, he didn't last long there. He and his wife were actually whisked away really quickly because there were two protests that were happening at the event. The first was a protest from pro Palestinian groups who wanted our government to take much stricter steps towards trying to ensure a ceasefire over in Gaza. The second was from the rainbow community themselves, who are really angry and upset at what this government is doing. Now, quick warning here, you're going to see a lot of comments in mainstream media pages about this from the sort of people who say things like, we should treat everybody equally, and here's a report from News Talk ZB on 17 reasons why we should bring back the 1893 public flogging laws with life imprisonment for homosexual activity. Ignore those. What the reality is here is that this government has very much made steps that could harm young people, in particular in the rainbow community, but also target specifically trans people as well, specifically trans women. And that is a real concern. And you'll get a whole bunch of people who don't understand exactly why those are issues, because they hear things like RSE in schools is bad. But the reality is, the research that goes into our RSC that we've had in schools has had really positive impacts, particularly on young people in the rainbow community, when it comes to being accepted and being a bit more understanding towards what they're going through from other students. It's seen a major decrease in the amount of bullying that goes on, which was a huge factor because we have abnormally high bullying rates, particularly around the rainbow community in our schools. On top of that, Luxon showed up with Sam Uffindell, who is problematic in himself in that he has admitted to committing a crime against another boy when he was in school. And while that report hasn't been released, the media has certainly made implications that that was a sexual assault in nature. And that's really concerning, particularly when it comes to the rainbow community not particularly wanting to deal with a bully in their midst. And that's absolutely understandable. Then, to make things even worse, one of the things that Luxon actually agreed to when it came to the coalition agreements was getting rid of funding or looking at funding for sports organizations if they didn't deal with the trans woman issue. Not that there is actually an issue, it's one of those beat up culture war cooker things that the National Party agreed to because Luxon wanted to be Prime Minister. On top of that, one of the other parts of the agreement was to get rid of quality RSE in schools. That quality RSE that's helping reduce bullying, that's making the rainbow community feel much safer because young people are coming up with a much broader knowledge as to what relationships actually are and how they interact with them and are affected by them. So when Christopher Luxon goes to a rainbow community event and gets booed at and people don't understand why, it's possibly because they don't have the lived experiences of having to grow up in the rainbow community, of not knowing how they feel or being really scared for themselves. And when you have a look at his face when he's leaving, you can kind of tell exactly how he's feeling. He is not impressed to have to be ushered out so quickly. But the reality is, in his urge to become Prime Minister, to do pretty much whatever it takes to get a coalition agreement with alt right cookers, he is putting rainbow community members at risk. And that's why going to something like the Big Gay Out was a really bad PR disaster for him.